ECAS, and I'm here to welcome you tonight to our celebration of our two cultures. This is a collaboration between the Korean American Association of Rhode Island and Teatro ECAS. Both organizations have been operating in Rhode Island for quite some time, several decades, and the collaboration is supported in part by the Expansion Arts Program of Rhode Island, which is in itself a collaboration between the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts, the Rhode Island Foundation, and the Rhode Island Council for the Humanities. We're very grateful for their support. So we have two evenings of cultural exchanges. The first is tonight, where we're going to talk about our own cultures and the heritages and arts from each of our cultures. And next week, this same time, next Thursday, the 28th, we will talk about our individual organizations' missions and our organizational histories as well. Tonight, we'll have presenting Suzanne Sharkey from the Korean American Association of Rhode Island, who is the treasurer. She's been involved with the organization for 3 years and has lived in Korea herself for 4 years, 2011 to 2015, and is half Korean. And we also have, from my organization, Teatro ECAS, Gonzalo Cuervo, who is our president of our board. He is one of the co-founders of our organization. And also many of you may know him as being most recently Deputy Secretary of State for the state of Rhode Island. Tonight, I'd like to introduce Dr. Bong-Sup Cho, who will give us a little bit of etiquette on our collaborative meeting. Dr. Cho is a URI professor since 1991. He is a former president of the Korean American Association of Rhode Island and is currently a member of the building committee. He's a chair of the building committee and a member of the cultural committee. Without further ado, Dr. Cho.
Thank you, Yvonne. I really appreciate it. I just want to go over some WebEx etiquette for today's event. And as you know, this is a live event. So keep the background noise to a minimum. Please mute your microphone. And I know it's rude, but as a host, I can actually mute you if necessary, right? And then we'd like to see you so that you can turn on your videos, but limit distractions and avoid multitasking. And so if you have any questions, send yours through a chat. If you want to speak, just say, I have a question in the chat, and I'll call you on to unmute and speak. And so either way, it works. That's all, and enjoy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Suzanne. I'll start sharing screen. Okay. I should have elevator music, I know. I could sing, but that would be terrible. All right, so I want to welcome you today. Our presentation is by both organizations, and the topic today is culture and tradition. From my side, this is actually our executive board. This is me over here, Angela Sharkey, Won Lau, Sang-wook Ji, Mr. Raymond Kim, and Dr. Bong-Sup Cho. As Yvonne said, I've been part of the organization for the last 3 years and serving as treasurer for the last year, and I have 1 more year to go. When we think about culture, there are 9 different elements that pop up, and over the next 20 minutes, I plan on covering a majority of those things. Why is because the following week, Dr. Cho will be talking to you about our community activities, and by our, he means the Korean American Association of Rhode Island. And hopefully this introduction into Korean culture will help you feel a little bit more acclimated and comfortable joining and participating in our events that are usually every month. And they tend to surround or center near our holidays. And so for the outline of my presentation, I decided we have to do some Korean history 101, very simple, nothing too intense. We'll touch upon cultural things like clothing, instruments, music, dance. As I mentioned before, we'll talk about some larger Korean holidays that are unique to Korea. We'll talk about food, which is in almost every part of Korea, but we have some kind of foods that pair really well with our holidays. And then finally, we'll talk about modern day Korea today, which might be the Korea that you might experience if you travel to Korea or if you interact with newer Koreans today. So when we talk about Korea, we are actually speaking about South Korea. South Korea is known globally as Korea, and North Korea is known as North Korea. However, once upon a time in a land far, far away, Korea was one united Korea. And so scientifically speaking, the Korean Peninsula was inhabited about 10,000 years ago. And this is present day Korea today. So you can see that it shares a land border with China, as well as a land border with Russia. North Korea is this dark orange, South Korea is over here, and Japan, which some people think is tiny, is pretty huge. It's almost twice the size of one whole united Korea. If you're looking on a map, some people say that Korea looks like a cute little bunny, and so that's another easy way to spot us when you're looking at the map. When we talk about once upon a time, long, long ago, when Korea was one whole Korea, this is kind of what it looked like. If you combined the green, the pink, yellow, and blue all together, and Korea, when you compare it to the bunny map, was actually larger than it is today. And so it had more land that China ended up taking over at a point in time. When we look at mythology of Korea, Korea's birthday started 5,000 years ago, according to the legend, right? And the legend is founded in shamanism. And so we have Lords of the Cloud, Lord of the Rain, Lord of the Wind, and we also have Lord of the Heavens. And why does this guy matter? Because Korea was founded by his son. And so once upon a time, his son said, "Dad, I want to give up heaven altogether." And you might think, what? Why would anyone give up heaven? Heaven is what everybody's chasing after. And so when we look at historical drawings of Korea and historical art of Korea, this is what it looked like. And some people might challenge me and say, "Oh, Suzanne, it looked like that years and years ago, but I promise you, it looks like that today. With life, lots of incredible nature landscapes to look at. This is Bukhansan in Seoul, one of my favorite mountains. Bangtaesan, Hallasan, which is iconic in Jeju. Some other waterfalls in Jeju, Sunrise Point. All of this to say that Korea is absolutely stunning and quite beautiful. It's so beautiful that not only did the son of the god of heaven want to leave heaven altogether and come live on earth, but actually Korea is actually the #1 flight in the entire world, both by passengers and by number of flights. And the place that most people are flying to is Jeju. It's stunning. And so the son of the god of heaven didn't have to fly to the Korean Peninsula. He actually opened the heavens. And so that's one of the holidays that we celebrate in Korea, is the foundational day of Korea, which is also known as the day that the heavens opened. And so what we are saying is one person is the direct descendant of the Lord of Heaven. And when he came down, his father told him to bring 3,000 other heaven citizens, I guess, to come live on the Korean Peninsula at that time. And their goal was to share not only art, but agriculture, as well as medicine with the rest of mankind. And so the Son of the Lord of Heaven came down and he founded the city of God. He then, according to the legend, there was a bear and a tiger that wanted to become human. The bear ended up becoming human, turned into a female, and she had a son, which then became the first king of Korea. So the first king, the first kingdom, known as Joseon. Korea is also nowadays known as Korea, or the land of the morning calm, which I think, if you look at this picture, is quite fitting. When we think about what was Korea like once upon a time, way back when, we actually have cave drawings and old art from that time. And so you see these women wearing this kind of clothing. When we look at, I'm sure I've seen lots of Native American, cave drawings, so on and so forth, but these are actually drawings of Koreans at that time on the peninsula, hunting, riding horses. These are some of the older photos from that time, and you can see that the clothing is pretty continuous throughout. And so this clothing is actually called the hanbok. It's two pieces. It's a short jacket for the women and a long skirt. And for the men, it's a long jacket and pants. You can see on the left, this is kind of like the most beautiful, most expensive hanbok you can possibly wear. So you would either be royalty or you would be royalty on your wedding day, which would be the most extravagant, beautiful hanbok possible. What's also really impressive to me is nowadays in Korea, when you get married, you can elect to have a traditional Korean wedding. And so on the right-hand side, you can see in modern day Korea, they wear something super, super similar to something that is centuries and millennia old, 2 millennia old. That's how old this garment is, or this style, and we continue it throughout up until today. So much so that our K-pop, our popular modern culture actually wears a portion of this clothing, which is what she's wearing. She's a singer for a band called Blackpink. Men, this is what it would look like. At that time in Korea, the first kingdom was established, and as time went on, there were other kingdoms that were established, about 3. So this kind of gives you a flavor that, when Korean was back in its indigenous primal tribal era, there were differences amongst the different kingdoms. Something that we also know based on the cave drawings is there was dance, because this is dance. We also have this art where it looks like 2 elaborately dressed women fighting, and the answer is no, this is actually the sword dance. Women, like in other cultures, were used to entertain men, even though we offer so much more. And so up until today, we actually still do these dances. So again, centuries, millennia old, we still carry forward those things that were once upon a time up until today. A little bit more modernized, but the same concept. Some other iconic dances that we have is the fan dance, which is unique to us. We also have the hourglass drum dance, which I think is pretty special because I don't really know, and maybe I'm not cultured enough, but I don't really know of any other culture out there that dances with an instrument as hardcore as some Koreans do. So I'm very impressed by this dance. Another one of my favorite dances is actually the 5-drum dance. And I'm going to do my best to show you why it's so cool. However, if the internet is lagging too much, what I might do is just tell you how awesome it is and show you the video clip, and then send out my slides later and you can enjoy it at that time. Let's see what happens though. So that's just to give you a flavor of one of my favorite dances. And of course, as I mentioned before, this is called the 5-drum dance. Super difficult to do because instead of wearing your instrument, you're dancing around it as you play. They also play this upside down, which I think is just bananas. And again, they did this once upon a time and they still do this up until today. This dance, meaning, all right, how do I get out of this? Oh no, I'm stuck in limbo. Sorry for the lag. Okay, so as we talked about dance, here's another series of drums they also used and danced around. They also have these kind of, I wouldn't say ancient, but traditional musical instruments. I actually love this kind of music. I haven't heard anything around the world like it. It's also, to me, super sorrowful. And I'm a person that actually likes sad music. I think you can enjoy happier times better when you really know what sorrow is. And to me, Koreans actually really know what sorrow is, which I'll get to. So this is called gukak. And I actually have an example of it, but for the sake of time, the fact that lagging is kind of not my friend today, or lagging is my friend today, I'm going to skip this, but again, I'll make my slides available to you and you can watch it at that time. So that's what life was like in Korea when it was this one whole Korea. And there was, at a time, as I mentioned before, Korea was a lot bigger than it is today. And the reason why it's a lot bigger than it is today is because we had China pushing, taking more land as time went on. And we also were fighting amongst ourselves as well. So the 3 biggest kingdoms at that time were competing for power, 2 gang up on 1, and then they break up, and then they gang up, and it's a whole thing. So we're fighting with each other as well as China is trying to take more of our land. We ended up having this kind of unique relationship with China because China came along as like a very powerful, it's a continent-sized country. That's a big deal. And so we have influences of Buddhism from them, which we get kind of like this hierarchy. So when we talk about the Son of God, we talk about reincarnation, we can say, oh, he's a big deal, and we listen to him because he's earned that spot in his life by living all the good lives that he lived, and you're way down at the bottom of the totem pole because you didn't do a good job at living life. And so we create this hierarchy in Korea. In the Korean language, there's actually 7 levels of honorifics when you talk to someone. So even the way you talk to somebody is different than you might talk to somebody else. As time went on, Confucius came along, and at that time, everything was based in education. And so that was a big deal moving forward. We have influences from China regarding our government, court rules, language, tomb architecture, ceramic production, sculpture, coinage, and classic literature. So all throughout, we have these influences, and the reason why is, to a certain extent, it was seen as like a status. It was seen as more educated for you to be able to speak Chinese with the Chinese people. And so that's why there are some of those Chinese root words in our language, much like, European languages have Latin root words. But all throughout, Korea always had this indigenous identity of self. So even though we had some outside influences, which we were attracted to, we still retained who we are as Korean people. About 14th century, King Sejong came along, And he actually developed our own alphabet because he said, we are Korea. And if we really want to advance going further, we need to be able to educate our people. We need to do that with reading and writing. And we also need to do that with mass production printing. The oldest book in the world that has been found is found in Korea. And so what they did at that time is they took porcelain tiles and they carved them, and then they started stamping them to mass produce articles for everybody to read and to kind of spread that knowledge. And so King Sejong is really iconic because this is one of the last modern languages out there. And I bet you in 5 minutes, I can teach you to read the Korean language. That's how simple this is. If you can do 1 + 1 = 2 addition, you can speak Korean in less than 5 minutes. You won't understand what you're saying, but you can definitely speak it. So we have 14 consonants, we have 10 vowels, and he based the shapes on these 3 images of sky, earth, and human. So China came along and influenced us, and then Japan saw that and they were like, hey, we're coming through. Between the period of 1910 and 1945, Japan actually occupied Korea. And this was a very stressful, this was a very upsetting time. They kind of marched right through and they took over. So if you see these women with umbrellas, this is very much Japanese culture. And the writings are also Japanese. And this is Seoul. This is the capital of Korea, Japanese-fied, because they really did just take over. And how did they take over? Well, they were double the size of what one Korea was at that time. And they had the power to do it. And so they did. Japan is one of the 4 major countries with power. So you have China, Russia, US, and Japan. Japan wanted more land, and the closest thing to it was Korea. And so this was what life was like under Japanese occupation. They took away their Korean names. They took away their Korean alphabet. They made them speak Japanese in the classroom. They also had this very unfortunate thing called comfort women, where they stole our women and they systematically raped them in an effort to motivate the troops to listen to what the Korean emperor, or no, the Japanese emperors were telling them, which was suppress the Korean people. So again, the 4 major powers, China, Russia, Japan, and US, at one point in time, the Soviets got together with Churchill and Roosevelt, and they said, we have to do something. Japan's out of control, and Japan's out of control as well as Germany. And so their bright idea was, let's divide it. And they thought, okay, well, what's the easiest way to cut up this land? Well, surprisingly enough, the 38th parallel on a map actually kind of runs midway through North and South Korea. And so that's what they did, is they separated it. The North went, and the Soviet was in charge of that. The southern portion of Korea was given responsibility to the US. It was very clear where the 38th parallel was, no question. However, after a couple of years, North Korea said, we're coming, we want it back, and they invaded. And thus began the Korean War, which more or less decimated everything in Korea. It really did kind of wipe out whatever progress that was made. One reason why kind of the Korean War ended is because the US actually ran out of targets to bomb in North Korea. And then South Korea was getting pummeled as well. And so you see a lot of their infrastructure just destroyed. As time went on, US got involved, Soviets got involved, and they said, okay, well, we're going to create this zone called the DMZ. We're going to formally say, this is our line, you stay over there, we stay over here, and that's it. We're not going to do this. And so there actually wasn't an end to the Korean War at all. It was just considered hiatus until they came up with another solution, which actually has never come. So the Korean War is actually known as the longest war in all of history because it never ended. But it lasted for about 3 years. This is what Korea looks like today. On a map, you can see how developed Southern Korea is. You can see how isolated and underdeveloped North Korea is. That's this little shaded, that's land, and there's not much on that land. That saying that goes out with the old and in with the new, I feel Koreans like to say, honor the old and bring on the new. And so that's what they've done. So between the period of 1953 all the way up until now, Korea is considered an economic miracle. And why did that happen? In my opinion, it's because Koreans are some of the most hardworking people on planet Earth. And so you're honoring temples from the Buddhist age. This is actually one of my favorite temples, and this is considered like the World Trade Center of Korea, right? So you have all this modern finance, and then you have this really serene and peaceful temple in the middle of it. Seoul's capital is, look how much they built when you saw through the Korean War that everything was kind of flatlined after all that bombing and destruction. We have some amazing architecture. We've just done a crazy amount of stuff since the Korean War, also with support from the US, but being able to finally have that freedom. Another way that we honor the old is our biggest holiday is called Chuseok, which I call it the Thanksgiving of Korea. And at that time, you can see modern day, what they do is they put on that Korean hanbok. They create this table of offerings for their ancestors. And they kind of wish them blessings. You know, thank you for where you've brought us today through all the difficult things that you've had, and continue to bless us going forward. And then when that's done, they eat this thing called bibimbap, which literally means mixed rice. It looks gorgeous. There's also something else that we do. Traditionally, our food, we didn't have refrigerators, and so we had to pickle a lot of things. And our number one pickled thing is kimchi. Kimchi is synonymous to Korea, as pasta sauce, I think, is synonymous to Italy. This is how we kept it in the ancient days. We buried it underneath the ground as a natural refrigerator, as well as fermenting the vegetables. We call kimjang, where you make all year's worth of supply of kimchi in one day with your whole family. You make the whole, everybody's supply in one day, and you make it to your family's recipe, which isn't written down, it's all through taste. I'm getting hungry, I know. We actually have a festival for kimjang, which is really fun. Speaking of that, we also have, this is out of order, but Hyundai. When we talk about where Korea has been to where they are now, Hyundai Heavy is the #1 largest shipbuilder in the world. And even though we have that and all that technology, we still have ajumas, which are older Korean women that are free divers. No air supply, and they catch, you know, fresh seafood and they eat it. And these women, to me, are the closest thing to living mermaids on planet Earth. And I think they're wonderful. They're older. Do you know how much, you know, energy, effort it takes to hold your breath and swim and collect delicious seafood at the same time? So I'm very impressed by them. So they collect it, they slice it up, and you go ahead and eat it. Super fresh. On top of that, brands like Samsung and LG are global international brands. It's kind of a big deal when you see where Korea was to where Korea is today. Korean cosmetics are also universally known. This is a short example of what's available out there. We also have Psy, which a couple years back broke records. He's a 40-year-old Asian man who didn't even speak English, who kicked the butt off Justin Bieber's records, established the breakthrough of 1 billion views on YouTube. Today, he has about 4 billion views on YouTube, and he's doing partnerships with Snoop Dogg.
Suzanne, we have 3 minutes.
I'll be there. We have BTS, which is also breaking records, which is a global phenomenon because, you know, even though their newest song, Dynamite, is sung in English, they've been well known for their music in Korean. And so a lot of their international fans are learning the Korean language because they're so excited about this K-pop stars. Another example is Blackpink, like we saw from before, collaborating with Selena Gomez. So again, going to my point of, you know, once upon a time where Korea was until today where Korea is now, it's pretty impressive. And it's one of the reasons why Korea is considered an economic miracle. And so that actually concludes my presentation on Korean culture. Am I muted? I clicked the wrong button for 2 seconds.
Oh, you're not muted.
Good. And that's it. that actually was about 94 slides that we went through. Again, could have done a whole lot more, but I'm trying to be respectful of people's time. And also, I'm excited to see what ECAS will be presenting on Latin culture. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, we do have an email address, which is Korean, Korean, Hanin, which means Korean person, HANIN, @gmail.com. We'll provide our contact information. And if you have any questions about something that you saw today, you actually want to take me up on my 5-minute Learn to Speak Korean challenge, you want to go to a Korean restaurant and know what you're ordering, come through. We would love, for you to be a more educated person in Korean culture, because the more educated you are on it, the more you're going to love it. I promise you. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. And ECAS, love to see what you have.
Gonzalo, it's to you.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Gonzalo Cuervo, and I'm the board president of Teatro ECAS, Latin American theater ensemble that was founded in 1997 right here in Providence. And Teatro ECAS has been presenting theater and the performing arts to generations of Latinos, and focusing on the theater as a form of self-expression and discovery for people of all ages and all cultural backgrounds, not just Latinos. But particularly, there's been a significant focus on the newer generations of Latinx kids that are born and raised here that don't have strong cultural ties to their parents' countries of origin, other than the oral tradition that they may have received from their families. So I'm going to share a screen with our, one moment, please. I'm going to share screen so that I can, here we are. Okay, great. So let me start at the beginning. Sorry. Okay, great. So we're very excited to be a part of this collaboration with all of you. And we're very intrigued and fascinated by your exposition on Korean culture. And we're going to take a slightly different tack, because obviously Latin America has a lot of cultural diversity, but we have an underlying theme, which is the fact that Latin America was a territory that already had vast and diverse pre-existing cultures when the Spaniards arrived and other Europeans arrived to basically occupy and conquer these territories and extract wealth and resources from these territories. So our history, which is, about 5 or 6 centuries old, is a history of a lot of conflict and a lot of cultural clashes between different groups, and even with folks coming to terms with their own identity and what it means to have this European influences along with African influences that came through the diaspora of the slave trade, along with the indigenous influences that predate all these other cultures. So that's we're going to touch about that from the context of theater briefly. And so obviously, before the Spaniards arrived in the late 15th century, early 16th century, the cultures that existed across what is now Latin America were the Aztecs, the Incas, and other cultures. And from what we know from history, these cultures had a tradition of theatrical performances that they used to present their own histories and to teach their youth, and as part of their religious tradition. And this is an image from an Aztec theatrical performance that obviously predates the arrival of any Europeans to the Americas. So once the Europeans arrived, they brought with them their tradition of theater. And in Spain, particularly, there was a long tradition of theater that had developed alongside with their literary tradition. And we have here a picture of a very ancient traditional theater from Spain, which is very similar to the contemporary theaters from England at the time, leading up to the era of Shakespeare and so forth. So with the arrival of the Spaniards, it only made sense that the missionaries, the Catholic missionaries, whose job it was to try and convert the natives of these lands to Christianity, to Catholicism, they would use theater as a tool to teach their lessons about religion, about Catholic faith, about Christianity. And there's a lot that has been written about how a lot of the missionaries use theater, and there are some anecdotes from the time that get to be very gruesome, where there's written accounts of theatrical representations of wars where they actually used deceased natives as props during their theatrical presentations, which is remarkable if you think about it in the context of how shocking this must have been to the native populations watching this happen. And so as Latin American countries developed their own individual identities and eventually became independent of or fought for independence from European control, we have a very particular example in the Dominican Republic, which is a theater group that was created by a young man named Juan Pablo Duarte. Juan Pablo Duarte was a very forward thinker, revolutionary, and he had spent some time studying in Europe. And when he returned to the Dominican Republic, he created a theater company called La Filantropica. And at the time, the Dominican Republic was under the control of the Haitian government. And he used La Filantropica very effectively as a way to create awareness and to organize people through the presentation of theater that had kind of somewhat hidden but not so hidden messaging, reinforcing the need for independence. And so La Filantropica was a way to get the message out, much in the way that people today use social media to get the message out. And he would write these very poignant but very simple to reproduce performances that would be performed over and over again in different settings to really organize people and to educate them about the need for a revolution. So if we jump forward to the modern era, in the 1960s and 70s, the theater of the oppressed was developed in Brazil. And this was revolutionary because this was a break with the traditional Latin American and Spanish language theater to a theater that really spoke to the reality of average people and that carried that tradition of using theater as a revolutionary tool. And so that brings us to the modern day, where we enter the role that Teatro ECAS has been playing in Rhode Island as a tool to share and disseminate theater, not only as a way of creative expression, but also as a way of self-discovery and of really looking at the reality of the immigrant in this society today and the many challenges that immigrants face. And it's funny because, although Latin Americans have a variety of cultures and a variety of traditions around food and music, there really is an underlying current of the influence that was imposed upon Latin America over the past 5 or 6 centuries that ties us together with this kind of Ibero-American identity. And so how we deal with that as we begin to assimilate and adjust into a whole new culture, which is the American culture, is some of the stuff that Teatro ECAS has been exploring as an organization. And obviously, Teatro ECAS has been around since 1997, so we're going on 24 years now, and has been active in presenting a variety of plays, but they've gone beyond plays. Teatro ECAS has also been involved in showcasing performing arts from other parts of the world, and in partnering with organizations for initiatives that are very multicultural, such as PVD Fest, which is celebrated in the city of Providence. Teatro ECAS has also focused on presenting historical plays, particularly plays that relate to the experience of populations that are here in Rhode Island. In this example, we have Yo Soy Minerva, which is a play that speaks about the experiences of the Mirabal sisters, who were revolutionary leaders during the 1960s against the tyranny in the Dominican Republic, and who lost their lives in pursuit of freedom and inspired an entire generation, and so on. So we also, Teatro ECAS has also presented comedies, both contemporary comedies and classical comedies from across Latin America and from Spain. And it's very interesting because when you think of a comedy, you think of something that's just designed to make you laugh. But because there's such a rich political and social tradition in Latin American theater, even the most lighthearted comedy is usually really infused with social and political commentary. And you're left at the end of the performance having laughed a lot, but also having really thought about some profound issues. So that's something that's very particular to Latin American theater. And since the pandemic, Teatro ECAS has had to move online because obviously we have a small performance space, and due to social distancing, our ability to have an audience is severely curtailed. So our executive director, Frances Parra, has tasked herself with doing a series of interactive live events, which include performance, conversations, panel discussions, dramatic readings of plays, and also musical performances, live musical performances, all made available online, both live and recorded for future viewing. And one of the things that we're incredibly proud of as a more recent development was at Teatro ECAS, we were able to begin offering super titles during live performances so that we could expand our audience, so that people who don't understand Spanish or don't have a conversational management of Spanish can go and they can follow along live, follow the performances with live super title translations in order to enjoy it. So hopefully those of you who are watching and our friends in the Korean American Association can join us as soon as we can get some folks back into the theater and you can enjoy some of our performances. And obviously there's a whole other element of youth educational programs and creative development programs for youth that ECAS has continued, even through the pandemic, has continued online and in limited numbers live, obviously accounting for the social distancing measures. So that's basically my presentation regarding Teatro ECAS, and if anybody has any questions, I would be glad to
there are no questions on the chat room. Maybe I'll ask one question. So yours, the association has been doing this for many years. How do you support yourself? How does it work?
Well, there's a combination of things. Obviously, there's an element of fund development, grant writing, advertisement sales, and ticket sales. But again, one of the key aspects of Teatro ECAS has been keeping ticket prices at a low price point to make theater as accessible as possible. So the ticket sales don't really represent a significant part of the revenue, because obviously, when you go to mainstream theater, people will pay $60, $50, $75 to watch a play. But in the type of theater that we're doing and the type of audience that we're reaching out to, we've kept our prices at around $10 or $15 per person for a performance. And, we have a lot of times at the beginning of a run of a performance, we'll do a pay what you can night. So people can go watch the performance for free, basically. So, so there's, Yvonne can speak to that because she's really involved in the development side, but it's a challenge. It's a challenge because there are a lot of wonderful organizations that are competing for attention. And Teatro ECAS is very unique in what it does. And because we've kept a very compact kind of operation, we've been able to operate with a very slim budget, but it's always a challenge.
Yvonne, do you want to,
Sure.
talk about the development a little bit?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I'll also, Elena had a question, and I'll sort of roll into her question as well. We do a lot of grant writing, as Gonzalo had mentioned. We're very fortunate in that, just like this program, the state of Rhode Island has been with us since our inception with grants from the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts. More recently, one of the main things that happened, and this is related to Elena's question about our children's programs, we have a program in the Pawtucket and the Providence public schools called Improving Young Lives Through the Arts in Providence and Pawtucket. And what this is right now, it's an after school and a Saturday program for children, at-risk children who are primarily Spanish native speakers, where we do arts training such as music, dance, and theater, all while improving their literacy skills in Spanish. And somebody needs to mute, I think, because we're getting a little echoey. And what happened was that was given some seed funding from U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Community Block Grant funding 3 years ago, which opened the door for all kinds of other funding. The thing about that kind of federal funding is that it requires an awful lot of grant reporting and, full-time equivalents and making sure that every T is crossed and I is dotted. And so we were able to leverage that to expand the program little by little every year. And that was really successful. But on the art side of it, and Francis trains all of our teachers, we have an international crew of teaching artists who are just fabulous. They're just amazing people. I've been in the office, which is, if you see our office and our theater are kind of like on top of each other, but I've been when listening to the classes as they go on, and it's just magical. The teachers have such a great rapport with our students. So that program actually, not unlike Trinity Repertory Company's Project Discovery, which began something like 40 years ago, it helped the organization build momentum and build more stable funding, which then allowed us, it allowed us to do, put more money onto our stages and pay our actors more and pay our artists more. So it's sort of like the education program helps to support doing plays, because doing plays basically, we know, loses money. If anybody just did plays, that, you know, to make, like Gonzalo was saying, you've got to charge like $100 a ticket in order to really cover the costs of things. So that's kind of like a roundabout way of explaining things. I know with, at least with the Trinity program, how they funded professional union salaries came out of their education program. And we're at the cusp right now of our education programs bringing in a stronger amount of money so that we can pay, if not union scale, the same amount of money as a union scale, if that makes sense, for our actors. So it's really, really an exciting tipping point is where we're at right now.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that was very, very helpful. There are a couple more questions. Maybe Yvonne, you can.
Oh, if I can, I can't. I don't know if I can see.
I can do it for you.
Yeah, could you read it to me? Because my chat is.
Yeah. Through conversations between KAARI and Teatro ECAS, including this program, have you found any surprising connections or resonances between these two cultures?
Oh, I can certainly answer that. We like food. We really like food, and we like food. No, and the hats. I was noticing just today that wide-brimmed hat, the Korean, I think it's a medieval look, right? It's very much like the wide brim, I want to say Peruvian. Gonzalo, you know the hat I'm talking about? Do you see that in Suzanne's presentation? But that was just being silly. I think we found our need to retain historical, cultural traditions as an integral part of what makes us inspired to continue doing what we do. That we want the new things. Yes, we want to be current, but we also very much want to retain what's been going on for centuries in our different cultures. And I think that was kind of one of the key things that we found.
Yeah. Actually, I'd like to invite Angela Sharkey to chime in here, because she's the chair of the culture committee of the Korean Association. So, Angela? Angela, where are you? Oh, maybe she's not. She steps up. Anyway, so.
She's here. She needs to be unmuted.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to just mention something. I mean, my brother-in-law is from Puerto Rico. I found that our cultures, like, we have a great respect for elders, and we know how important family is, and we like to value our history and continue that, but if we want to be current, just like what you were saying, in that matter, we are very similar. And I am with the Heritage Festival ever since I got here. That's 2003. And as we have this cultural show, international show, once a year from the State House, there's a park area we used to do, and we moved, and we did it this year virtually. But I think at the end of the day, I found that it is amazingly similar to one another. Those of us who came from another country to make this place our home, we came here to better our lives. And I always say I'm so proud to be a Korean, and I am so blessed to be American as well. And I thank God for that.
That's great. I know that the Yvonne mentioned food 3 times. And so once this pandemic is over, hopefully we'll get together to share food. I think that would be the first thing we want to do, right?
I have to say one thing. Suzanne Sharkey is my daughter. I have 4 kids. She's second daughter. By the way, Suzanne, you did a great job. Gonzalez, you did an excellent job too. And I learned my history through Suzanne's presentation. That's how good she was. But she tells me, because I have 4 kids, I don't think I am that old, but she always reminds me, my language of love is food. Because the first word I say when you come in, instead of saying hi, I go, did you eat? Like everybody was dying, they're starving. But that's just, so she is not quite happy. I am always with the food. I park myself in the kitchen because I have to cook. I have to feed you. I always feel that way. But I think many Spanish, and my mother-in-law is Italian, but she says where she came from, they call it manja manja. I'm not quite sure. Spanish people are very much giving, sharing as well. And I think it's beautiful to be able to get to know each other. And at the end of the day, we're going to find ourselves like, wow, we are very similar to one another, much more than we thought. And I think that's beautiful.
Yvonne, we have 3 minutes to go. So to you, Yvonne.
Well, that's, I just want to say thank you very much to all of our participants for coming on the call. And we'll be putting this out through our Facebook page once we figure out the technology. And we'll also be putting it out on our YouTube channel, the Teatro ECAS YouTube channel. Thank you very much to the Rhode Island Expansion Arts Program and Rhode Island State Council on the Arts, the Rhode Island Foundation, and Rhode Island Council for the Humanities. I've noticed that some of our participants are from those organizations, so thank you very, very much for coming and being with us tonight. And I was really blown away about things I didn't know about my organization, but certainly Suzanne, that was just a first-rate presentation, and I want to thank you very much and thank everyone. Did anybody have any other questions for us? If not, maybe he's not seeing anything, so just say thank you and
this is Elena. I had to say that this is a great presentation. I loved it. I love hearing about your culture, political, the history of both Dominican Republic and Korea. You guys did a fantastic job. And this is why this is what the interculturals are all about. Bravo to all of you guys, to both of your organizations. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Elena, for giving us this opportunity. And that will be it. Enjoy your 1 extra minute tonight, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.